The later years of life often present a stark divergence in trajectory, where one path leads to a gradual dimming of faculties and the other ascends toward a radiant clarity of mind. Society frequently peddles a narrative of inevitable decline, suggesting that memory loss and mental fog are the unavoidable taxes of longevity. Yet this widespread belief acts as a self-fulfilling prophecy that accelerates the very decay people fear. A different reality exists where the brain does not merely survive but thrives, fueled by a deliberate shift in consciousness that Wayne Dyer often described as moving from ambition to meaning. By dismantling the erroneous zones of thinking that equate aging with obsolescence, an individual can unlock a reservoir of vitality that keeps the mind sharp and the spirit ageless. This exploration charts a course through the principles of intention and biological resilience, proving that a calm and clear brain is not a matter of luck, but a consequence of alignment. Cultivating the mindset of ageless intention, the biological machinery of the human brain is exquisitely sensitive to the software of belief running through its neural networks. When an individual anticipates cognitive decline as a certainty of aging, the brain triggers a cascade of neurochemical responses that prioritize conservation over growth, effectively shutting down the mechanisms responsible for neuroplasticity. The philosophy espoused by Wayne Dyer suggests that intention is not merely a wish, but a field of energy that shapes physical reality, including the cellular integrity of the central nervous system. By consciously adopting an intention of vibrant health, the aging individual signals the endocrine system to reduce the production of stress hormones like cortisol, which are known to atrophy the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. This internal shift requires a rigorous examination of the silent agreements one has made with societal stereotypes about getting older. It is not enough to simply hope for a good memory. One must embody the conviction that mental clarity is the natural state of being, regardless of the calendar year. In the practical theater of daily life, this mindset manifests in the way a person approaches the morning hours. Consider an individual who wakes up and immediately scans the body for aches or the mind for moments of forgetfulness, validating a narrative of decay before breakfast. Contrast this with a person who rises with a specific purpose, viewing the day as a canvas for expression rather than a test of endurance. The latter individual engages the reticular activating system in the brain, filtering out distractions and focusing neural resources on creative problem solving and engagement. This proactive stance creates a chemical environment rich in dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters that are essential for maintaining focus and fluid thinking. The act of setting a daily intention acts as an anchor, keeping the mind from drifting into the foggy harbor of passivity. However, the transition from a passive acceptance of aging to an active command of one's vitality is rarely a seamless process without resistance. It is entirely normal for the mind to cling to familiar patterns of worry, even when those patterns are demonstrably harmful to well-being. The brain has etched these pathways over decades, and forging new trails of positive expectation requires consistent, gentle repetition rather than forceful coercion. Wayne Dyer often emphasized that you do not attract what you want, but rather you attract what you are. Thus, to attract a sharp memory, one must be a person who values and trusts their mind in the present moment. This alignment removes the friction between desire and belief, allowing the nervous system to operate at optimal efficiency. A significant counterexample to this principle arises when an individual attempts to use positive thinking as a bandage over genuine physiological neglect or unresolved trauma. Intention cannot override the biological necessity of sleep, nutrition, and physical movement, nor can it bypass the toxic effects of chronic repression. If a person asserts they are ageless but continues to harbor deep-seated resentment or fuels their body with inflammatory substances, the incongruence creates internal stress that further clouds the mind. The mindset of intention must be holistic, integrating the physical vessel with the spiritual will. It works best when the internal dialogue of limitless potential is supported by external actions that honor the body's needs. The mechanism of this mental clarity is deeply rooted in the concept of self-concept and its influence on gene expression, a field known as epigenetics. When a mind holds a vision of itself as capable and expanding, it influences the telomeres at the ends of chromosomes, which are markers of biological aging. Research suggests that stress and pessimism shorten these telomeres, while a sense of purpose and peace can maintain their length. The brain, observing the signals of safety and expansion sent by the mind, continues to generate new synaptic connections well into the final decades of life. This biological responsiveness underscores the truth that the body is the obedient servant of the mind's deepest convictions. In a social context, the refusal to participate in the organ recital, the common habit among seniors of discussing illnesses and ailments, preserves cognitive energy. Participating in collective commiseration about memory lapses reinforces the neural pathways associated with those failures. Instead, steering conversations toward new ideas, philosophical concepts, or shared laughter stimulates the prefrontal cortex and keeps the social brain agile. The individual who refuses to validate the limitations of others effectively protects their own mind from the contagion of decline. This social discipline is a crucial component of the ageless lifestyle, creating a buffer against the pervasive cultural hypnosis of frailty. Ultimately, the power of intention serves as the architect for the brain's physical structure. By steadfastly refusing to entertain thoughts of inevitable decline, the individual preserves the neural real estate required for complex thinking and memory retrieval. The brain remains a dynamic, learning organ rather than a decaying archive. This mental stance prepares the ground for the next crucial step, learning to detach from the toxic emotions that silently erode cognitive function. How does my internal dialogue shape my physical reality? The art of detachment and emotional freedom, the accumulation of emotional debris over a lifetime, presents one of the most significant obstacles to mental clarity in later years. Dyer frequently illustrated this with the metaphor of squeezing an orange. When squeezed, orange juice comes out because that is what is inside. And similarly, when life squeezes a person, anger or anxiety spills out only if those emotions are stored within. For the aging brain, harboring long-standing resentments or regrets creates a chronic inflammatory state that is disastrous for cognitive health. The constant low-level activation of the fight-or-flight response floods the brain with neurochemicals that impair the formation of new memories and cloud judgment. Detachment, in this context, is not indifference. It is the deliberate release of the emotional charge attached to past events, freeing up massive amounts of neural energy for the present. Biologically, the state of forgiveness and detachment lowers the baseline activity of the amygdala, the brain's fear center. When the amygdala is chronically overactive due to unresolved grievances, it hijacks resources from the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for higher-order thinking and emotional regulation. By practicing the art of letting go, an individual allows the brain to shift out of survival mode and into a restorative state. This shift is essential for the consolidation of memory, which occurs most efficiently when the brain is calm and the nervous system is balanced. The clearer the emotional landscape, the sharper the intellectual faculties become. Consider the scenario of a person who spends their retirement ruminating on career slights or family conflicts from decades ago. This individual may find themselves walking into a room and forgetting why, not because their brain is broken, but because their cognitive bandwidth is occupied by the invisible processing of old anger. In contrast, observe the senior who has made peace with their history and views the past as a finished chapter. This person approaches daily tasks with full attention, their mind uncluttered by the noise of what should have been. The difference in memory function between these two individuals is often less about age and more about the allocation of mental resources. There's a reflective point to be made here about how often people defend their limitations, effectively arguing for their right to be unhappy or forgetful. It is a curious paradox that the ego often prefers the familiarity of a grievance to the vast, open space of peace. Wayne Dyer noted that being right is often the booby prize. The real victory lies in being free. When an individual stops defending their past hurts, the energy that was used to maintain those defenses becomes available for learning new languages, mastering new skills, or simply enjoying the beauty of a sunset with crystal clarity. However, a limitation exists in a misunderstanding of detachment as suppression. Trying to force oneself to forget painful memories without processing the underlying emotion can lead to a phenomenon known as spiritual bypassing. This suppression requires active cognitive effort, which can be just as draining as the resentment itself. True detachment comes from understanding that the past no longer exists and that the only moment of power is now. It is a cognitive reframing that neutralizes the trigger rather than a forceful pushing away of the thought. If the emotional work is skipped, the brain remains in a state of dissonance, and the benefits to memory and clarity are lost. The physiological payoff of this emotional freedom is the reduction of oxidative stress in the brain. Oxidative stress is a primary driver of neuronal aging, caused by an imbalance between free radicals and antioxidants. Emotional turmoil increases the production of free radicals, accelerating the wear and tear on brain cells. By cultivating a mindset of peace and refusing to be offended, the individual literally cools down the brain's metabolic engine. This preservation of cellular integrity is the biological counterpart to the spiritual practice of forgiveness. Furthermore, the practice of detachment extends to the outcome of one's actions and the behavior of others. The need to control the environment or the people within it is a major source of mental fatigue. When an individual releases the need for things to be different than they are, the mind settles into a state of alert relaxation. This state is the optimal condition for memory recall and creative insight. It allows the brain to access its archives without the interference of anxiety or the pressure of performance. The journey toward a calm brain is thus inextricably linked to the liberation of the heart. By clearing the emotional backlog, the individual creates a pristine internal environment where the mind can function without obstruction. This emotional clarity lays the foundation for a renewed engagement with the world, where curiosity replaces judgment and the brain is continually revitalized by the new. Where am I holding on a history at the expense of my peace? Staying connected to source and novelty, the human brain thrives on novelty, a requirement that does not expire with age, but rather becomes more critical. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, is driven by the intake of new information and experiences. Wayne Dyer often spoke of staying connected to the source, a state of being in touch with the creative intelligence that animates all life. From a neurological perspective, this connection manifests as curiosity and a willingness to step into the unknown. When a senior individual engages in learning a new instrument, a new language, or a complex game, they stimulate the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that acts as fertilizer for brain cells. This biological process defends against atrophy and keeps the cognitive machinery oiled and responsive. In the daily life of an aging individual, the choice between routine and novelty is a choice between stagnation and growth. The brain is an energy-conserving organ that prefers to run on autopilot, executing familiar habits with minimal effort. While efficient, this mode leads to a dulling of the senses and a rigidity of thought. A person who intentionally disrupts their routine, taking a different route to the store, cooking a recipe from an unfamiliar cuisine, or engaging in debate on a topic they know little about, forces the brain to wake up. These small acts of novelty recruit dormant neural pathways, increasing the density of white matter and improving the speed of information processing. The spiritual dimension of this engagement involves a surrender to the mystery of life. Dyer encouraged an attitude of being open to everything and attached to nothing. This openness eliminates the fear of failure that often prevents older adults from trying new things. When the ego's need to be an expert is removed, the joy of being a beginner returns. This beginner's mind is a state of high cognitive arousal and receptivity. It transforms the learning process from a chore into a form of play, which is significantly more effective for memory retention and skill acquisition. A potential counterargument is that aging brings physical limitations that restrict the ability to seek new experiences. However, novelty does not require physical travel or athletic exertion. It is an internal posture. Reading a book on quantum physics, listening to a genre of music one usually avoids, or meditating on a paradox can provide intense cognitive stimulation without leaving a chair. The limitation is rarely in the body's capacity for movement, but in the mind's willingness to stretch beyond the familiar. The vast inner landscapes of imagination and contemplation offer infinite frontiers for those willing to explore them. Deep social connection also plays a pivotal role in this mechanism. Interacting with people from different generations or backgrounds introduces unpredictable variables that the brain must process in real time. This social complexity is one of the most demanding cognitive tasks humans perform, engaging memory, emotional intelligence, and executive function simultaneously. The individual who remains socially active and open to new relationships maintains a vibrant, flexible mind. Isolation, conversely, deprives the brain of this essential workout, leading to a rapid decline in cognitive sharpness. The concept of source implies a continuous flow of energy, and the brain mirrors this by needing a continuous flow of stimuli. Stagnation is the enemy of memory. The water that sits still becomes stagnant. The water that flows remains clear. By aligning with the creative impulse of the universe, the individual ensures that their mind remains a vessel of flow. This alignment fosters a sense of wonder that is chemically indistinguishable from youthfulness in the brain. Ultimately, the commitment to novelty is a commitment to life itself. It is a declaration that the learning curve has no summit and that the world remains a place of endless discovery. This intellectual and spiritual curiosity creates a buffer against the narrowing of perspective that often accompanies aging. As the mind remains expansive and hungry for truth, it prepares to integrate all these practices into a unified state of presence. What new frontier am I willing to explore today? The eternal now and the unified mind, the culmination of these practices, leads to a state of being that transcends the linear progression of time, anchoring the individual firmly in the present moment. The final key to a calm, clear brain is the realization that the past and future are mental constructs, while life only ever happens in the now. Wayne Dyer frequently emphasized the power of the I am presence, the acknowledgement of one's existence as a spiritual being having a human experience. When the mind ceases to oscillate between regret for what is gone and anxiety for what is to come, it settles into a profound stillness. This stillness is not empty. It is the fertile ground from which clear memory and sharp cognition emerge. In this state, the brain is not wasting cycles on hypothetical scenarios, allowing its full processing power to be applied to the immediate experience. From a physiological standpoint, living in the now minimizes the background noise of the default mode network, a brain system active when the mind is wandering or ruminating. Excessive activity in this network has been linked to unhappiness and cognitive decline. By practicing mindfulness and staying present, the individual dampens this activity, reducing mental fatigue. This conservation of energy results in a feeling of lightness and clarity, often described as the fog lifting. The memory improves not because the capacity has increased, but because the interference has vanished. The senior who masters this presence can recall names and facts with greater ease because they were fully paying attention when the information was encoded, rather than being half distracted by internal chatter. An applied scenario of this final integration is the elder who listens with total absorption. When speaking with a grandchild or a friend, this individual is not formulating a response or judging the content, but is simply witnessing the interaction. This quality of attention is rare and magnetic. It signals a brain that is at peace with itself. The clarity of their memory is a byproduct of the intensity of their presence. They remember the details of the conversation because they were truly there for it. This presence is the ultimate antidote to the scattered, fragmented thinking that characterizes the distracted mind. There is a profound empowerment in realizing that the number of years lived does not dictate the quality of the mind. The physical body may show signs of the journey, but the consciousness that inhabits it can remain luminous and expansive. The integration of intention, emotional detachment, curiosity, and presence creates a synergistic effect that protects the brain and elevates the spirit. This holistic approach moves beyond the simple mechanics of diet or exercise, though these remain important, to address the fundamental driver of human experience, the mind itself. The journey of healthy aging is, therefore, a spiritual journey as much as a biological one. It is a process of shedding the layers of fear and limitation to reveal the core of clarity that was always there. By aligning with the principles of universal intelligence and refusing to accept the societal script of decline, the individual claims their birthright of a vital, engaged, and peaceful later life. The calm brain is not a fortress built against the world, but a mirror reflecting the depth of the soul. In the final analysis, the state of one's memory and mind is a reflection of how one interacts with the universe. To be calm is to trust the process of life. To be clear is to see without the distortion of fear. As the individual moves forward, they do so not toward an end, but deeper into the infinite potential of the present moment. The legacy of a life well lived is a mind that remains a sanctuary of peace until the very last breath. Who am I when the noise of time falls silent?